Does not eating reverse your plaque? This was a big question in my mind as I researched the studies that showed the metabolic changes depending on a one-day fast, multiple-day fast, intermittent fasting of 16 hours a day. My own results of reversing my carotid plaque in just 3 months says that diet plus high-intensity interval exercises plus fasting is remarkably effective. For most of human history, fasting was not a choice. It was a season. And during those famines in winter, something happened inside our human body that we are only now beginning to understand. The science of fasting. Just think of a bear in hibernation, not eating for months. I found 5 studies that examine what fasting does to cholesterol, to triglycerides, to HDL, and to the molecular machinery that removes cholesterol from arterial plaque. The data spans from 24-hour fasts to 40-day fasts. So let's look at the 24-hour fast. Horne, in the American Journal of Cardiology in 2012, he looked at a single 24-hour fast. What he found was human growth hormone surged 1,300% in women and 2,000% in men. LDL dipped modestly, triglycerides rose transiently as the body mobilized stored fat for fuel, and HDLs held steady. At 24 hours, the liver had exhausted its glycogen reserves, that's the glucose reserves, and begun to switch from glucose to fatty acid oxidation using the fats for energy. And the metabolic switch was turned on for fat. But the deeper biological programs, autophagy, immune reprogramming, cholesterol efflux, not yet engaged. These words may sound like a foreign language, so I'm going to explain them. And once you understand them, your mind and your heart may alight with understanding and move you into action. So 24 hours starts to open the gates, but the plaque clearing machinery still needs more time to be turned on. So let's look at a broader fast, a 5-day fast in the journal Cell Metabolism 2015, and also Michalsen in BMC in 2013. By day 5, something called autophagy is fully engaged. This is the cell's recycling system. It's dormant during times of plenty, but it's activated at industrial scale, disassembling damaged proteins and dysfunctional organelles like mitochondria. The insulin growth factor 1 drops, C-reactive protein drops, which is a measure of inflammation. LDL begins to fall in measurable terms, and inside the arterial wall, something subtle begins. Macrophages. These are the immune cells embedded in plaque that start to cause and mobilize plaque into necrotic core. It starts shifting from an inflammatory M1 macrophage towards a repairing M2 macrophage. So M1 macrophages make plaque, and M2 macrophages clear cholesterol from the plaque. Do you remember that video I did on this? This is the first step of what we call reverse cholesterol transport. On its own, it will not actually move the plaque, but is one of the most essential and powerful first steps to reverse arterial plaque. So let's talk about autophagy. Autophagy deserves its own special moment because most people have heard the word, but they don't fully understand what is actually happening inside the cell. So in 2016, a Japanese cell biologist named Yoshinori Osumi won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for discovering the mechanisms of the autophagy. Autophagy means self-eating. And here's what he's found. When a cell is well fed, it is in growth mode. It builds new proteins, new membranes, new organelles. But some of those components are damaged, misfolded, or oxidized. In times of plenty, the cell ignores them. They accumulate like junk in a garage when food stops arriving. The cell shifts from growth mode to survival mode. It activates a structure called the autophagosome, a double membrane bubble that forms around the damaged material, surrounds it completely, and delivers it to the lysosome. The lysosome is a cell's recycling center. The lysosome breaks that junk down into amino acids and fatty acids, and the cell reuses them, recycles them as fuel and building blocks. Now here's why this matters for heart disease. Inside an atherosclerotic plaque, macrophages are filled with oxidized lipids, damaged proteins. They're dysfunctional. When autophagy activates during fasting, those macrophages begin to digest their own toxic cargo in the plaque. The oxidized cholesterol that made them sick gets broken down and processed. The cell regains function, and a functional macrophage can do something a dysfunctional one cannot. It can activate something called ABCA1, which is like a gate transporter. It opens the door and begins exporting cholesterol through reverse cholesterol transport. Fasting doesn't just change your blood markers, it changes the behavior of the cells inside your plaque. And that is what Asumi's Nobel Prize was about. The cell eating itself to survive. And in the case of atherosclerosis, arterial plaque, the cell is eating itself to heal. Quick question before we go on. What's the longest you've ever fasted? I want to know, I'm curious. And what did you notice in your body? Drop your answers in the comments below. I'll try to read every single one. Now back to the story. Let's look at a longer fast, a 10 to 14 day fast. So Grundler, in the European Journal of Nutrition 2021, he looked at 40 volunteers fasted for 14 days under medical supervision at the Buchinger Wilhelmi Clinic. This is 4 generations of fasting clinics in Europe. High end. So they fed them 250 calories per day. Detailed lipoprotein subclass analysis at baseline day 7, day 14. Numbers at day 14, LDL cholesterol fell 28 milligrams per deciliter. Decent, but not mind-blowing. Triglycerides fell 31 milligrams per deciliter. And small dense LDL, the most atherogenic subclass causing plaque, these particles that are small enough to penetrate the arterial wall, dropped significantly. HDL cholesterol fell modestly, about 6 milligrams per deciliter, but large HDL particles, the functional workhorses of reverse cholesterol transport, they actually increased. So at 1 month after refeeding, after the fast, HDL cholesterol efflux capacity. This is the measure of how effectively HDL removes cholesterol from the plaque, rose above baseline. So in 14 days, LDL was down, triglycerides down, small dense LDL crushed, HDL function improved after refeeding. By day 10, the sustained absence of insulin had upregulated the ABCA1 transporter on macrophage surfaces. So these are the molecular doors of reverse cholesterol transport. The protein that allows cholesterol to leave the macrophage, bind to ApoA1, which is part of the HDL, and begin the journey out of the arterial wall. The body turning its own cholesterol exit system. Now let's look at a much larger 21-day fast. Wilhelmi published an article in 2019 with 1,422 subjects, the largest prospective fasting study ever published, and fasting periods from day 40 to day 21. Triglycerides dropped 39 milligrams per deciliter on average. LDL decreased proportionally based on duration of the fast. The longer the fast, the greater the fall. The LDL to HDL ratio remained unchanged. Blood pressure, glucose, white blood cell counts all dropped. Let's look at the extreme, 40-day fast. And here's the honest truth. The metabolic data from Cahill's landmark Harvard studies in the 1970s and extended Buchinger protocols tell us that at 40 days, LDL reaches very, very low levels. The body has burned through significant stores of visceral fat now. Inflammatory markers return to baseline. Sustained autophagy has recycled enormous quantities of oxidized lipids and damaged proteins. Everything we know about biology suggests that plaque should regress. The metabolic conditions are optimal. Reverse cholesterol transport is activated. The immune environment inside the plaque has shifted from destruction to repair. But here's the truth nobody will tell you. No human being has ever undergone before and after plaque imaging across a 40-day fast. Probably because it's too hard for most people to sustain and do, let alone in a study, let alone in large numbers. So there was no intravascular ultrasound, no CT angiography, no carotid ultrasound. The study simply has not been done. But let's look at animal models. That'll give us a hint. Intermittent fasting reduced aortic lesions by 35 to 40%. It shrank necrotic cores and thickened fibrous caps. But in humans, no one's looked. That's not just a gap in the literature, in the medical literature. It's an opportunity. I'm doing a variations of fast, intermittent fasting, weekly 1-day fast, 2 to 3-day fast monthly, and my imaging endpoints are carotid ultrasound and CT angiogram every 6 months. If the plaque has regressed, you will see these scans on this channel. If it has not, you'll see that too. Science does not promise outcomes, it promises honesty. The imaging study has not been done to this extreme, even though it's N of 1, myself. I want to be clear. Any extended fast over 3 days should be medically supervised, especially if you have disease or on medications, blood sugar medications, antihypertensives, and so forth. I'm not recommending this. I'm just reporting the science, posing the questions, and I'm showing where the science has a frontier.
These videos save lives. Tag me, like, subscribe, and ask your questions below. Click one of these videos and share it with someone you love. Together, we will save lives. For my up-to-date learnings and more, visit me at ham.com.